Hello, everyone. You're welcome to this session of Need to Know series. My name is Emmanuel Babatunde Adebola, and I have someone very special today. I'll be introducing her in a bit, but I just want to let you know that there's a reason why we do this. The reason why we do this is because in life, there are two choices. You can give excuses or you can make things happen. Life is unfair, that's true, but it doesn't have to remain unfair to you. We all have opportunities to turn life around. You're given a lemon, you turn it into a lemonade. And that's essentially why people like this, the person I'm going to be talking to, are able to share their testimonies today. Not because they've not gone through their fair share of challenges, but because in spite of those challenges, they've been able to come out and are triumphing, and they become role models, they become beacons, regardless of which nation they are. So it's my privilege to welcome a lady who was once my classmate who, if things had gone well, who even knows? But let's see. I'd like to welcome Yemi. I knew her as Yemi Adedibu, but now I'll let her introduce herself. So over to you, Yemi.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's really a pleasure and an honor and a privilege to be here today. Yes, I am Esther Akinyemi is what I go by. A lot of my friends from when I was little would call me Yemi because that's my middle name. But a lot of people also know me as Esther. And so I'm a physician, I'm a psychiatrist by profession. I'm a child of God, and I am married with 2 kids. And I'm hopeful that my story and my own experiences will bring you guidance and will give you hope as we go on today.
All right, thank you very much. That's beautiful. So you're Esther. Okay, so because back then I was known as Tunde Adebola, and that's still correct. But then Emmanuel Adebola is what I am also known by in this part of the world. We're both in North America. She's in the US, Detroit, right? And I'm in Toronto, Canada. But it's a wonderful opportunity and it's great. Okay, so let's start with this. You've introduced yourself as a psychiatrist. At what stage did this? Maybe I should start by sharing my own story, because I do a number of things now, including being in ministry. And you won't believe it that one of my earliest recollections of saying what I wanted to do was back in primary school. I was in primary 4. Coincidentally, we went to the same primary school, if you remember. We went to University Primary School in Ilorin, Kwara State in Nigeria, West Africa. And I was in primary 4. The name of our teacher was called Mrs. Ibiwoye. And that day, that period of my life, I was involved in a lot of pranks. And so I don't know what I did that just made everybody say, no, this guy, there's no hope for him. And so there was a session where a few days later, they asked us, what would you like to be when you grow old? And then when it got to my turn, I said, I would like to be a pastor. Everybody in the class said, you, a pastor. But the reality is that, yes, I've had my ups and downs. I have different things. I'm not a pastor in the church, but by the grace of God, I'm a minister, I'm an apostle in the marketplace, and I'm proud of that. So I say all of this to ask you, at what stage did it come to you to become a psychiatrist? Is it an idea, an ambition, a dream you've always nursed, or is it something that just, popped up along the line?
Yeah, I don't know if you remember this, and probably primary school was probably a little bit too young. But as a child, I was actually quite ill. I had asthma. It wasn't a time when they had a lot of medicines for it. And so there were lots of limitations. And I think I spent a lot of time going to the doctors, and a lot of mornings I wasn't in school. I was somewhere sitting, waiting with a lot of about 50 to 100 women waiting to see a doctor. And I think it was at that point that I thought I would like to be a doctor. I would like to be like one of these people who was helping me. But I didn't think about psychiatry. I didn't even know what psychiatry was when I was going to medical school. I went more so because I liked the way that the doctors helped me, and I thought I was going to be a pediatrician for sure, taking care of little children. And so I got into medical school, and then I decided maybe surgery was the next thing I was going to try to do. And as I continued my rotation, psychiatry essentially happened to me. I had my psychiatry rotation, and I found myself just enjoying it. It wasn't quite work. It was something where I went to work, we came back laughing. My fiancé then, now my husband, knew that there was a different rotation because I would come back home and just spend the time reminiscing about the day and how it went and all the wonderful experiences that I had. And it was just beautiful. It was at that time that I felt, okay, I think psychiatry is going to be it for me. And I think the other part of it was as I went into my internship, which I did at the Baptist Medical Center in Ogbomoso, I found that I gravitated towards people who had mental health concerns. And that was either they were in the hospital or they were outside the hospital. Frankly speaking, I had someone come visit my house who thought I was seeing a boyfriend who was not a boyfriend to come and challenge me. And so I found that that's something that I gravitated towards. So when
Wow.
I relocated to the United States, it was like, well, do I still like surgery? Do I still want to do psychiatry? It was something that by that time, I kind of felt psychiatry was something I was really passionate about. So I
Hmm.
applied and then I got both an internal medicine position as well as a psychiatric position, being somebody who was in the post-match. And
Okay.
post-match means that I didn't get into the regular matching system that put people in residency program. I finished my exam on that same day, so I was booted out because I didn't have my results in time. So I
Okay.
did have to do what we call scramble, which essentially meant you applied to 1,000,001 places all in within 24 hours and prayed
Wow.
that God will help you find a place. And God did. And so I ended up here. I took the psychiatric position and not the internal medicine. People
Wow.
often ask me a little bit about more of what I do, which is geriatric, older adults, why. And one of the things that led me to that point was in my transition to the US, I actually taught middle school. I taught sixth and seventh grade in the
Okay.
American system, which if
Okay.
you've been in the school system is very different than Nigeria. So I had a little bit of culture shock.
Yeah.
But in that place was where I kind of decided, I don't know, as much as I like children, I don't know this is what I want to do. And
Hmm.
I went ahead and volunteered at the senior center. And at that senior center was where I found my niche. I enjoyed working with older adults. I enjoyed being with them, even outside of the clinical realm. And so that's how I ended up with being a geriatric psychiatrist.
So what you're saying is that even within psychiatry, there are different age groups. So you are with the older generation. That's what you're saying, right?
Yes, I deal mostly with older generation. I also deal with the medically ill population as well. Those are like the two main population I do. The other part of my job is mainly education, where I oversee training of other residents. Um, People who are now finishing medical school and trying to become psychiatrists, I oversee their training where I am.
So let me ask you a question that may. At what point did you pick up the accent? Because the Yemi I knew was not speaking this nice and poised and obviously you've stepped up. You had to you picked that along the way too. Was that while you were teaching, or just as it just came along the journey?
Probably just came along the journey. So my accent was definitely different, and I've been here now for more than 20 years.
Wow.
So I think I've learned, and I would tell you that a lot of Americans still cannot understand what I'm saying sometimes. So
Hmm.
it's not, you may
Yeah, we
think I
Canadians
don't have
find
the
it difficult
accent,
to
but
understand.
people I work with know I have an accent.
I see, but you're speaking well for I mean for me. I can understand everything you're saying, and I'm sure majority of people who would listen to this would. Also, there's usually a subtitle, so regardless, everything you're saying is on point anyway. So that's all we'll take it. Yeah. So you found out over the period of time. You know, the funny thing was we grew up at a time where many of our parents wanted us to study or wanted to have a medical doctor in the house. And my parents, left to my parents, I would have been a medical doctor, except that I didn't like biology. I didn't like biology because it's not like I didn't know it, but you had to get everything right. You had to, if you miss something, you miss the point. And I felt, why? So I gravitated more towards the engineering courses, and that's why I took engineering. Fortunately, however, my younger brother said he wanted to be a medical doctor, so that kind of just made things easier for me. The other thing also was that I don't, and I still don't like blood. The sight of blood doesn't scare me, just doesn't go well with me. And that's pretty much why I didn't really, on those two accounts, I just knew that medicine was not it for me. But it's nice to see people like you who seem to enjoy, not even seem to, you are clearly enjoying what you're doing. But obviously, you don't have to do with a lot of blood either. It looks like your own area is just people who have the mentally challenged.
Mhm.
Yeah. And you know, the funny thing is that not until long ago, anytime I heard about mental illness and mentally challenged people, it came as a joke to me. That was a phrase we used back in Nigeria when I was growing up. And I want to apologize to non-Nigerian, non-Yoruba speaking people. It says, "Were don't work, Bilomo." So that was my interpretation. That was my attitude that people who are not, it was just, I saw them as them over there. But you won't believe that today I'm seeing it in a new light. Why? Because I've had personal challenges with what could be qualified as an imbalance in mental state of health. And it's made me a lot more sympathetic, a lot more understanding that it's not everybody who's necessarily in the hospital that deserves to be there, one, or that, and in my view, I think I see now that there seems to be some sort of stigma associated with that, which in my view really shouldn't be, because I would even press my case to say two things. One, I think majority of people who are on the streets out there have some form of challenge or the other, whether they have detected it or not. And the other thing I've also want to say clearly is that I know you're a professor right now, which you probably omitted. You guys are too being modest, but it's I also know that there's no human being that can say they know it all when it comes to mental health. It's one area I've seen because I've deliberately taken it upon myself to study it, and I'm amazed that it's a whole school of a whole body of knowledge that still needs to be developed, even though there is a lot out there in the open space. So how would you define mental health if I were to ask you, before I share some of my own experiences?
Sure. I mean, health generally is defined as kind of being in a state of being in a place where you're well in your body as well as in your mind. And when you think about mental health, you're thinking about being able to be well in the way you think, in the way you relate to the world, and in the way you react to circumstances around you. On some level, you can see it more of how you see the world. What kind of sunglasses do you wear that clouds the way that you see the world, or how you kind of react to the people around you and the events that kind of come to you. And when we think about health, we're thinking about being in a good place.
Yeah.
With those thoughts, as opposed to illness, which means that we have struggled in one area or the other. And being that none of us is perfect, everyone has had something that is not perfect in terms of their mental health. Just like with the body, you have headaches. We don't consider it life-threatening, but nonetheless, that's not health to have headaches. You stubbed your toe and all of those things. And same thing with mental health. There are times when things are subpar. It doesn't necessarily mean that you do have a mental illness per se, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're fully in mental health either.
You know, when I was in secondary school, I went to Federal Government College in Ilorin, Kwara State, Nigeria. Somewhere around GS3 or SS1, we had a teacher called Mr. Adeshida, and he told us, I want to confirm this is true. By the way, did you go to FGC? You didn't go to FGC?
I went to FGC Ogbomoso. I didn't go to Ilorin.
You went to FGC Ogbomoso. Okay. One of the things he taught us is that he gave us a concept called the 5 minutes of madness. And according to him, every human being within a 24-hour period has some element of insanity. Is that true? I mean, when you're in school, you take everything hook, line, and sinker, but now many years after, is that really true? Because he said it could be in the form of the way you laugh, an exaggerated laugh, or the way you just behave that. But in every 24 hours, every human being has that temporary insanity. So I just wonder, is that something that's true, or just a nice sounding taboo that's what has carried on?
I have no scientific basis to confirm that everybody has to have 5 minutes of madness. I think everybody will go through challenges one way or the other. It could be in a day, it could be in a month. However, the thought that every 24 hours you have to do something weird, I don't have any scientific basis for that.
So I debunk it then. So this is a myth buster. We debunk that. Because we have very good teachers, but there's no point carrying over what is. So what stages, when were you in FGC? What year to what year? 85
I
to
was
91?
there from 85 to 91.
Okay. We had a unique experience in FGC, Lauren, in the sense that we resumed the same day as when we left. So we resumed school on the 21st of September 1995, and we finished our last paper on the 24th of September 1991. It's amazing. It's amazing. And it was just a few days ago that we celebrated 50 years of the alma mater. So we're still in celebratory mode, if you will, of FGC. Lauren, do you know when your own institution was founded?
Gosh,
do you know when?
I cannot remember off the top of my head. And I know we had an anniversary not too long ago, but right now, I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's been there for a while. I just don't remember. We just had an anniversary, actually. And I'm blanking out.
52. You never know, because I think those unity schools were formed about the same time. And the objective was, one thing I like about the unity school, and maybe you can share some of the experiences, that it was a place where, like I'd like to say, the son of a farmer from, let's say, Kogi State, Kaba Kogi State, where I come from, can interact and relate with the daughter of a vice president of Nigeria from Lagos. And if he or she is lucky, they can even toast and, things can work out. And I think for me, that demonstrates the beauty of those unity schools in the sense that they provided a level playing ground for anybody to hope and wish and bring their children, as long as the child was bright and that child had a worldview that was not beclouded by religion or ethnicity or politics. It was just, all encompassing. And for me, that was a success. Our motto was Pro Unitate. I don't know if that was a common motto.
That's the common one.
Oh, it's common. Okay. So probably, okay. I think that's something commendable. It was started in 1973, I think. So I don't know if ours was one of the first sets, but I know Lauren we just celebrated 50 years, and I don't know at what point Ogbomoso was set up,
Yeah, I can't remember the exact date, but yes, it definitely gave that level ground where you met different people from different phases of life. You had people who spoke almost no English starting off and ending up kind of just being like everybody else. So it did speak to a lot about how much you can get when you integrate people.
Yeah, but it's unfortunate that the boarding schools or the school system in a place like Nigeria have actually dropped rather than hold steady. Because when I look at what we experienced in our time, there were lots of things that we thought that we were suffering, but looking back, I'm grateful for that discipline, that rigor that went into our upbringing. Yes, in our school we had, I don't know if you guys had the concept of, so in the boarding school for the boys, you had a term called one boy. And one boy means if you're a child, one boy, somebody had to come. Did you ever have anything like that in the girls' hostel?
Oh yeah, there was like one girl, sometimes it's even one dog.
I've never had a one girl. There's one girl.
Really? One girl or one dog, essentially.
One
just
dog?
Somebody.
Really?
It could be called anything, actually. It's like one something, you better be going there, be the first there. Otherwise, you will truly be that one dog.
Exactly. But the thing about those things is that they built resilience in us. They built, that ability to withstand pressure. I look at my kids now when I tell them, wake up here, there, because I wake everybody up in my home now. And when I tell them to wake up, I see people still lying on the bed, wondering. I didn't have that luxury, and but I'm very grateful for that experience, because I think that hardship, that experience brought out its own way, helped me to become who I am today. Did you have socials too?
Yeah.
Was Ogbomoso a mixed school or?
It was mixed.
Oh, okay, because some of them were just girls only or boys only. Okay, so Ogbomoso was also mixed.
Yes.
Excellent. So any favorite experience from that school? So for instance, let me say what I mean by favorite experience. I had crushes in FGC. that I still laugh at today. I'm like, wow, someday come a long way. So is that something that you share, or you were just, because I know that you've always been academically inclined. So have you always been, you never saw the boys? It was just books all through.
I had male friends, and I actually have male friends still now from that period of my life. Very good friends even till now. I didn't have like a boyfriend during my time there.
You did?
I did not.
Okay.
I did have a lot of friends that we carried our relationship out of, high school, secondary school, into university, and even till now. Some of them you do know. Dele Adedibu was also at FGC.
Dele Adedibu lives here in Canada with me.
I know.
He was excited to watch this. Oh yeah.
Yeah. We've been friends since primary school, through secondary school, college, and even till now.
Wow. You know, Dele was the lead. He scored the highest in civil engineering university. He was that bright. Is
Dele,
that
Dele
better?
scored 11 out of 10 in further math in secondary school.
Wow.
So yes, I know it's very bright.
Wow.
It
In
was
further
just,
maths of all subjects.
yes, in further math.
Hmm.
So it was just very good. And so we do have that relationship till now. Another person I met there was Ayobamioke, who is also somebody we still talk a lot. Actually, we talk pretty much very frequently. We've been friends since that time, never missed each other's birthdays even. So we were that close. We're both married with our families right now, and we all kind of get together when he's in Nigeria, I'm here, but we still
What do you
keep
call him? Ayobami.
Ayobamioke, yes.
I think that name sounds familiar, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I,
he's in Nigeria. So, but yeah, I have a few friends from that. I have some that died as well.
wow.
So
Okay.
we have a lot of people. And we have a group. My class still has a group. We all still kind of chit chat about what's going on in
My,
life.
my class has a group up till today. In fact,
Yes.
I chat with them every day, and I
Yeah.
don't have the best of reputations there because I'm a troublemaker. But I like it because I just like to retain that youthful mindset. But a lot of my classmates have become old in their minds. So things, jokes that they could take back then in school, they don't want to take it now. So
It's too
that's
much.
fine.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I enjoyed my time at FGC. I enjoyed it. I always say that, I mean, I became a Christian when I was a very young child. I think I was age 10 then. And so most of my
Wow.
time in
That was
FGC,
just before, was that just before going in or because I know we entered school at 10, we entered FGC at 10.
yeah, right about that time. And then it was kind of solidified back when I got to FGC and I became part of that. So I would have been probably what you would call the SEO of the time. So,
I
but I
see that.
enjoyed worship and I still cannot find a place that would worship as children in that phase of life.
Was it
Uh,
FCS? What was yours called? Ours was called
Gosh, well, it was not even called FCS. I don't even remember what it was called, but I just remember the experience and how much it impacted me and how much, even till now, every now and then, I'm like, I wish I was just back there, just being able to
Wow.
worship. We had our own version of socials. We called it Presco night, where we just worshiped all night long. And
Really?
yeah,
It's
like instead of
amazing
social.
that some people were able to carry through their faith. I wasn't. See, when I was in FGC, like the first term, I joined the choir department,
Mhm,
and I was singing in FCS.
mhm.
And so when the exam came and the result came out, I got 13th position. So when I got home, I told my parents, they said, what happened? Is the choir, it's not me. So they said, okay, if choir is going to be a problem for you, because my mom was a teacher in FGC, Lauren, if choir is going to be a problem for you, then you please, let's keep choir for now. You
Mhm.
know what I got the next step? 14. So that
With
was
no
just me
choir.
telling you, if you want to lie, go and look for another thing to lie, not me.
Yeah.
So I actually, in my case, I would admit that I debated a bit because, as it were, FGC was a place where there are many things I wish I could change in my life in that period of because I made so many I made my own was a basket load of
Mhm.
mistakes. But I was given a nickname. Did you have a nickname? I was called Bolus. In fact, many people still call me by that name, Bolus, even though I've evolved. I use a different brand name now for things I do. But Bolus was a name that was given to me in FGC. And a lot of people still call me by that name. I have a different brand name because I do a number of things now, entertainment. I go by the term Tundosco, but they still use the Bolus brand. But eventually, when I was in my senior secondary, I then became a day student in
Mhm.
Ilorin. And that's when I mingled. So I actually thought you went to USS, University Secondary School, Ilorin Kwara State. I didn't realize you went to FGC. So when I was in senior secondary school, I then got to know people from USS because if I dial it back, when I finished university primary school, I actually had an option of going to either FGC or
Yes.
USS. I was qualified for both. But that's when I started mingling with people who are from USS. Some of them incidentally left FGC. They started in FGC, but due to the hardship, the rigor, because it wasn't everybody that could survive. Due to the rigor, some of them left. So I'm talking specifically about a guy called Dayo Fabayo. You probably would know Dayo Fabayo up
I
to
know that
now.
of Amaya,
Dayo
yeah.
Fabayo was in that category. Bossy Abiy was in that category.
Part two.
One guy that was our head boy, he didn't go to USS, but he also left FGC, was Dario Olabi. Do you remember Dario Olabi?
I don't remember Dario Olabi, but yeah,
Okay.
Bossy and I maintained contact for at least halfway through college before I think
Who's
we.
that? Who?
Bossy Abioye.
Okay, Bosse. Okay, Bosse is in the US now, by the way. She's also in the
Oh,
US.
I didn't know.
Yeah,
Okay.
she is in the US. I have a contact. So Bosse Abiy was there. There were a few who are our senior. A guy who was our senior was Femi Bukoye. Femi Bukoye was my senior in FGC Lorraine, but then crossed over to USS. So it was nice. At that time, I started to mingle with them and got exposure. We had parties and stuff. It was an interesting life. So by the time I finished secondary school, believe it or not, one of my prayers to God was, God, let me discover myself. Leave me. You see all this religion, leave me. Let me discover myself. I'll be back. And God is amazing. He just watched me. And for the first 100 level, 200 level, and even entering into 300 level, I was just one. When someone's life is, sorry, let me just, when someone's life is just looking for what is not missing, that's how my 100 level, 200, I was just wondering about. That life was not for me. But when you're trying to also show that you belong, until the 15th of June, 1995, when I said, God, okay. I know that I am just chasing the wind. And mercifully, that day, the funny thing is that if you go before then, the same person who said to God, God, give me some time, and I admitted to God, I'm trying to get back, but I don't know the way back to you. If you can have mercy, help me, draw me back onto yourself. And God organized circumstances. I went to a friend's house, Okweko Molafe. I don't know if that rings a bell.
I know. Okweko was my class in medical school.
Great. Okweko Molafe is, if you are saying who was the person that preached to Tunde Adebola, it was, believe it or not, it was Okweko Molafe. I went to see him in his house, and he had recently given his life to Christ. But he wasn't saying anything new. Everything he said, that's the funny thing. Because we went to a good church, UMCA church, where Reverend Luke Peters was ministering and all that. Reverend Luke Peters was in Nigeria from 1984 to 1994. So he had ministered, he was somebody that, even despite my confusion, I had a lot of respect for him. So everything Okpe was saying was known. It was just that, just hearing it again. So on my way home that day, that thought just came that, why don't you go for fellowship today? It was a Thursday evening. And immediately I responded and said, I would have liked to go, but it's far. So I was staying in Tanke, and the place to board the bus was a place called Tipa Garage in Tanke as well. I said, that thought, how you easily clear the thoughts. So as I continued working, I became hungry. And it turned out that on Thursdays, the only place you could buy bread was that same Tipa Garage. So I started to go. When I wanted to buy bread, I started going. I had walked only a few steps when that thought came. But you just said that place is too far to go for the. I knew that I was caught. When you can't run away. So I reluctantly went, got my bag, went on the bus, got to the fellowship. It was tax fund. The Apostolic Christian, I don't know what the full stuff, students fellowship.
Yeah.
That's what they were. Do you know what they were doing at the drama? So it wasn't really because anybody, that's why I credit Okweko Molafe, because it was just a drama presentation. And I said, in the course of drama, I said, if you can allow them to make the altar, raise the altar call today, I will give my life to Christ today. That's why the altar call is very important, because you never know who. It's not even the eloquence of your words. For me, it was just a confirmation, and that's what happened. And so when I left the campus, going back to the hostel, where I was staying, incidentally, I was staying with Dio Fabayo at the time. I was in the cab, and the prayer I prayed to God, and God says my heart is, now that I know I'm born again, and you know I'm born again, as this car is going, let it have an accident and let me die. Because I know if I die now, I'm going to heaven. But beyond today, I cannot sustain it, God. I cannot sustain it. This year will be 28 years that happened. 28. God has been faithful. God has been good. I've not lived a perfect life. I'll be honest with you and with anybody watching. But God has never left me. He got to a place where God told me recently, he said, you're good, You're bad and you're ugly. They're all mine. This is not a liberty to live anyhow, but this is a way of understanding that even when you are down, even when you have given up on yourself, like I have many times, I still have you. Perhaps the passage of the Bible that helped me is Psalm 37, verse, is it 23? It says that, behold, the perfect man, mark the upright, for the end of that man is peace. That's been my story. Or it says that the steps of a good man, the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delights in his way. Though he fall, that's me. Though he fall, he shall not be utterly cast down. Why? Because the Lord upholds him with his hand. So I've had my own fair of challenges, but I'm grateful that God has been merciful. But let's spin it back to the mental health, because that's an area I'm very particular about. Do you know why? Because in North America, it's one of the leading causes of death, if not the significant cause of death. It's not accidents, it's not air crashes, it's not plane crash, it's not road crash, it is mental health, depression. And that's why I'm particular. And in my own case, my experience or my introduction to that world was in 2016. What happened was, I was working for a consulting firm. Out of respect, I will not mention their names because I don't know who's going to be watching this, but anybody who knows me knows my story. I was working for that company and I was doing very well. My first career was as an IT professional, and God helped me. I did that for about 7 years. Then I moved into consulting. In this company, I was a senior manager. I'd been senior manager for about 5-6 years, and I was next in line to becoming a partner. We called him managing director, but was really a partner. And in 2015, my name was sent to the regional office in South Africa, but they stepped it down because they said our business had not grown enough. They didn't have a challenge with me per se, but the business had not grown. So they said, let's watch in 2016. But in 2016, the economy in the market in Nigeria was not stable. We had a new government, Buhari had come in, and things were just not. So try as I may, things did not pan out for me. Now, to be a partner, there are two things they watch. There's delivery and there's sales. Nobody questioned my delivery capabilities. Where I had to demonstrate my capabilities was in sales. I had to show, and I tried so hard, but it didn't work. Now, there's something we do in our school, in our place of work called monthly performance review meetings. Every month, you're checked, you're ranked. And so Tunde Adebola, who had been used to seeing his name as number 1, number 2, maybe at times number 3, all of a sudden my name dropped to number 9, number 10, number 11. And I began to panic that, of all years, the year that I'm supposed to hit the whatever is when this thing happened. You believe that, as simple as that was, I took it to heart. And I could not accept Tunde Adebola, the failure. I wish I could explain to you what this means. You see, all my life, my parents are both academicians. And I had been taught that to make it in life, have good grades. So my philosophy of making it in life was IQ. Once you have a strong IQ, everything. And truly, it served me up until then. But that period of my life, it failed me. What happened is, believe it or not, as simple as this, I had been so successful in my career, I did not know how to accept failure. I did not know how to accept myself without meeting up with all those. And that's what led me to, I went to a clinic, they said I was clinically depressed, but I've since found out that it wasn't as acute as it was, they made it out to be. But so to show you how somebody, a normal person, can just literally, so it's not like, that's why I also recognize that this whole mental health is not even necessarily hereditary. It could just be that something in life hits you. Maybe the loss of a very close one. I even hear women, when they get pregnant, in some cases, there's postpartum depression. So there are different causes. And that was my own romance, as it were. And God has delivered me from that, but I will never forget that period because I became someone else. Another time I experienced something close was when I came to Canada. I came to Canada in 2017. And I would say easily that I underestimated what it takes to transition. You probably came at an earlier age, so probably okay for you. I came at an age where my career, like I said, I had almost been partner, but then I switched on, and things did not pan out. And you won't believe that. I have an MBA, I have things that I have been cerebral. But I could not get a place of work like I had planned because of some things where I will not go into details. And all of a sudden, I found myself taking a blue-collar job, working on the shop floor as a machine operator. I saw myself as a failure. I was working shifts, days, night, afternoon. I can't explain to you what that does to the mind. So these days, but the good thing is that when God brought me through that, in each of these cases, God has brought me through. I've actually become better, and somehow I've been able to interpret the situation positively. Not everybody does. I've been able to recognize that in all of this, God was still at work. So for instance, coming to Canada, the challenge, God helped me realize that, and believe it or not, all the while I was a consultant, I knew theory, methodologies, but I didn't have guts. But when I went through the shop floor, I met real men, as the people that were invisible to me before, people who actually are the brains, not the brain. Usually, when you're in that place, it's not your brain, it's your hands. Those are the people that build structures. You see bridges, the San Francisco Bridge, you see vehicles, the people, you see airplanes, you see structures. I interact, and I now value those people like never before. But I said a long thing. I would like to just shed some light. How does mental health, what are the clues? What are the indices? Can they be prevented, or is it just we wait for the cure? Just educate us a bit, because this is your area, and I'd like you to just give us as many examples as you're privileged or you're willing to, because a lot of people will be watching this at some point. Thanks. Professor, by the way, Professor Yemi, please, over to you.
So as I'm an assistant professor, I am actually not a professor.
Yemi, you're a professor. Tell your bosses that you are, if I show them this video, tell them that you're a professor even before any of them became.
So, but yes, I'm glad to talk about mental health, because it is true. One of the things I tell jokingly people is that everybody needs a psychiatrist or a therapist of some sort.
Agree.
And the reason I say that is we all go through life. Yep. And life is not always nice and kind to us.
Yep.
We always have the times when we go up and we go down. And those are the different things that affect us in terms of our mental health. Yep. And I'm using the word mental health as opposed to mental illness, which is a little bit different.
Differentiate it too, please, because that's an important
mental thing. Health essentially means that you have the challenges of mind, you have your mind working in the right place. Doesn't mean that you never get times when you feel sad, doesn't mean that you never get when you feel anxious, because those are all normal emotions. Okay. When we come to mental illness, we're thinking about something that impacts you strongly enough where your ability to function gets impacted. So for example, if you lose someone or something, what you're describing in your place is that you lost the perception of yourself. This is who I was.
Helping me to put it the way it is. I lost perception of myself. Okay. When next I talk, I'll say, according to Professor Yemi, go on.
Of who you were and your identity. And with that would always come grief, right? If we lose something, we grieve for it, if it's important enough. If you lose a job, if you lose a person, we grieve. And some of that is normal, right? It's not normal for you not to grieve a loss. It's actually abnormal for you to lose something and be jumping all over the place and laughing and excited that you lost something. So emotions are all part of normal life. And mental health says that you are able to have all of these emotions in the right amount that doesn't negatively impact you, at least not for prolonged periods. When we think about mental health, we're saying that something has happened and it's impacting you negatively for a significant period of time. So for example, when we talk about depression, we are not talking necessarily about you feeling sad for 2 days. We're talking that, not only do you feel sad, you stop enjoying things that you would normally enjoy. So it doesn't even mean you don't do them. You may do them, but you're just not as interesting. It doesn't carry the same flavor anymore. You're not sleeping. You're not eating well, or you're doing too much of it. So some people, they sleep too much. Some people, they eat too much when they're feeling, you begin to think about negative things that would happen in the future. Yep. So whereas you had hope before, you stop having hope. You stop think about what's going to happen in the future. And and that has to go on for at least 2 weeks. So if it's not, when we think about the major depressive disorder, we're really thinking of all of these things going on at the same time for 2 weeks. Okay. That becomes an illness and enough to impact your work. So you're dragging. It's very hard for you to even do homework with your kid if that's what you do. You go to work, it's hard for you to focus on meeting. You can't remember to meet deadlines because you just can't remember as well. You're reading one line 50 million times instead of 2 at best. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking for when we start to think about things like depression. And depression and anxiety are very common. Anxiety is like one of the most common things. And anxiety is worry on some level that something bad is going to happen, essentially. With anxiety, you're thinking about worry that is bad enough, again, that you're not sleeping, that you begin to have what we call panic attacks. And panic attacks feel like you have a heart attack, but you don't have a heart attack. So your heart may be beating fast, you may be sweating, your fingers may grow numb, you may feel like
so that's what they call panic. I had one once before, but I didn't know what it was. Oh, so that's the panic attack. I've had panic attack, but I never knew what. Oh, that's I had in that period too, believe it or not. I even held my chest, I held my heart together. So that was what it was.
Yeah.
Wow, that was not a good feeling. I'm telling you,
it is not a good feeling. A lot of people end up in the emergency room because they truly think they're having a heart attack, but then they do all the tests, there's no heart attack.
Because then I actually thought I was going to, wow, thanks for helping me. I never knew. This was 27, this was 6 years ago. So this was 2016. So that's 7 years. Wow, thanks. Okay.
Yeah. So anxiety is very, very common. And that's one of the things, probably the most common type of mental illness ever. Again, anxiety by itself is not abnormal. So if you're going for a big presentation, you will probably feel a little bit of anxiety, and that anxiety will drive you to double check and check again and prepare. You may keep you up a little bit at night, but that's not something that keeps going on for a long period of time. You're doing it around that time. That's normal. We expect that you're not just going to be cavalier about life. It's not normal for you to, you have an important presentation that would mean the entire world would collapse or not. You should be anxious a little bit. Something should matter to you. But when it gets to the point where you can't sleep, you really can't eat. If you eat, you may even throw it up. For some people, you start to have abdominal pain. Your shoulder feels like you have 20 pounds boulder on each of them. You're having headaches that you can't seem to explain. Those types of things can suggest that there's a mental illness here. And when I say there's mental illness, it doesn't mean, oh, you need to be in a hospital or not. Sometimes people do need to be in the hospital. Sometimes people do need to be on medication. A lot of times people may need therapy, just finding somebody who is an expert to talk to help them walk through some of those things. And so there's a different continuum. There's something else we call adjustment disorder, which is probably common and people don't always pay attention to it. But sometimes adjustment disorder just means something bad has happened in your life and has caused you to have all of these symptoms. If you remove that bad thing, usually people bounce back within a few months.
Wow, thank you. Nobody has ever told me this. Talk a bit more about this, because I have a story to tell on that. Talk to me about the adjustment, what disorder?
Adjustment disorder.
Please tell us about that.
Yeah. So adjustment disorder is a type of disorder that happens following a significant negative event. It could be anything. It could be something as somebody lost a job, house burnt down, natural disaster. Could be just something bad. And that thing that is bad now is followed by all the symptoms I described earlier of depression or anxiety, as the case may be. So adjustment disorder could be something that has just depressed mood symptoms, which is not enjoying life anymore, feeling sad, hopeless. Or it could be something that has anxiety symptoms, which is a lot of worry, feeling on the edge, not being able to relax, feeling keyed up. It could have both. And for some people, it could have just behavior disturbance where they're just really nasty to everybody around them. So that adjustment disorder usually would last oftentimes up until you remove the stressor, or at least you found a way to resolve the stressor, even if it's not fully gone away. And usually within 3 months that stressor goes away. So for example, if somebody lost a job and now they found a new job, within 3 months, usually they should be back to their usual self.
You know what, let me tell you a story, because you've just helped me. And I hope all my friends who watch this will now finally realize something. You see, I told you about my story coming to Canada. You don't know how grateful I am for what you just, in fact, maybe this was for me. Coming to Canada, I underestimated the transition of coming here. And so I, went through that experience. I was depressive. I was not depressed. I was depressive for those 3 years that I worked at the shop floor, because for me, it was like the end of I stopped living, literally. I was going to work, but I hated everything. I hated myself, man. I was just, the funny thing was, the only thing I told myself was, I was not going to shoot myself. I was not going to kill myself. I was never going to put a trigger on my head. But if death came and said, Tunde or Emmanuel, I'm here for you. I said, why did you take so long? That's how bad it was. But when the situation changed, what changed the situation for me was that in 2022, I paid a visit to my country, Nigeria. And when I got home, I suddenly discovered that, because I had thought in the period of my crisis that I made a mistake coming at that stage. Oh, if you had stayed and become a partner, all of these things would not have happened. But when I went home in 2022, somewhere around June, July, August, number one, I saw that the state of the economy was not in the best of shape. People at the age of 55 wanted to run out of the country. There's a term they use there, they call japa. People are really desperate to move. So when I went, I was thank God. First thing I said was, thank God I left. So what was supposed to be a mistake became, thank you, Lord. Second thing was that I saw that my colleagues who I left behind, who have also seen managers, they had moved on. You know what I did? That did a reset in my system. So I came back to Canada loaded. So I will tell you that I came in 2017, my body came in 2017, my mind came last year, 2022. That's how it was. But what also happened was I now became, so I'm usually, I've always been a little bit hyper, but I now became really hyper. So people who knew me were like, this guy, what's happening to him? And people started spreading rumors that this guy has mental health issues. And I kept saying, no, there's nothing wrong with me. But they kept, so they even developed a theory around it. Now, one thing that happened, I would admit, is that I had, like you said, symptoms that could make you easily conclude that I did have that. For instance, I had a flood of ideas. It was like my mind was just racing. Things that just, things that just popping, and I was coming up with different initiatives. Then, one other thing I also admit to is that I was in a lot of social groups, WhatsApp stuff, and I was giving too much info. I was, disrupting, that's the word, disrupting the system. And so some people, in one or two cases, I was even asked to leave. I was excused. And so people who have been looking for reason would latch onto that again and say, we said this guy is not, until I said, guys, there's nothing wrong with me. By God's grace, I also took time to reflect on the causes, and I dialed things back gradually. But I never understood how people would assume that I had mental health issues when I knew I did not. In fact, to make things easy, I subjected myself to psychiatrists just to check and they gave me a clean bill of health. That's when I said, guys, okay, if this is a joke, let's stop it, because it was becoming something else. Thanks to you now, the adjustment disorder, as you've called it, helps me now to understand what was happening, that you can actually display symptoms of something over, because initially you said 2 weeks, but now you said 3 months. So that explains why it can go on for a while and still give people because all I'm saying was just within a relatively short period, but it looked as if people were just confirming and calling, guys, I'm not what you call me. And what I even told them was that I'm a better version of myself. In fact, one place I said, if what I'm experiencing is madness, may I never be well again. Because I was at peace with myself, but some folks just felt,
And this is not madness, to kind of clarify. So I was talking, when I said 2 weeks, I was talking about major depressive disorder, which is kind of really struggling with depression. Adjustment disorder, it's a bit different. You have the stressor, and within 3 months of that stressor, you develop the symptoms. And if the stressor is taken away, within 6 months, you're back to your normal self even. So it could even take months, much more months than just that, to get back to your normal self. But the point is that the stressor is removed. If the stressor is removed, you don't keep on having the symptoms in perpetuity. Let's put it that way.
Okay. But you've talked about the negative, which is depressing. And the reason why I know this is because I've gone to psychiatric lessons. So I know that, let's say this is normal, X and Y axis, where Y axis is hyper, normal, and depressed. Are you with me, right? And then the X axis is time. I also know that from experience, normal is, where most folks are. But depressed, we've talked about the negative axis, but there's also the positive axis where you are hyper, you're acting, blah, blah, is that under your purview too, or you only focus on the depression?
So you're talking about something we call bipolar disorder.
Bipolar disorder. Well, let me ask you the bipolar, but okay, the question is, does anybody go north outside of bipolar? Is it only bipolar that makes people go north of numb? Do you know, is my question clear?
In normal life, there's normal ebbs and flow of going up and down. Just like I said, being sad or being anxious is not abnormal. Same thing, being super happy and excited is not abnormal either. Okay. But it could also get to the point where you flip over to the other side where it becomes abnormal. So normalcy kind of see it like a little wave, in your engineering, your sine wave, you kind of keep going, but you're not shooting up, you're not shooting down. Okay. See depression as you shoot things down, and then see bipolar, in this case, more specifically, what we call mania is shooting all the way up. And there's something else we call hypomania, which means you're shooting somewhat up. Okay. And it becomes a disorder again when you have somebody being hyper it could be just part of normal behavior. But when you have somebody who is clearly different from their usual self, now they go and they don't sleep, but they don't feel tired. So it's not that, I didn't sleep and I'm feeling tired, I just could not sleep, which often happens even in depression. These people feel that they can go on and not sleep for days and not feel tired because they have very important things to do. They have something we call flight of ideas, which essentially means they have all of these weird ideas, none of which they can usually do much with because there are too many of them coming on at the same time. It's different from something we call rumination. Rumination is more, you're thinking over and over, overthinking things. It's a little bit more rumination, which can happen too. With flight of ideas is like 1 minute they want to be president, then they're building a citadel, they're becoming a pope, and they're just having all of these random ideas that may not be related at all. That's causing them to not be able to focus. They can't really focus, but it's more so because they're overloaded with thoughts and ideas. They also can have behaviors that are erratic. So they may start to drink a lot, which is typical for them, not somebody who necessarily normally drinks. They may be easily distracted. So they can't keep at anything for any significant amount of time. They have this burst of energy. They may have these grandiose ideas ideas about, oh, I'm very important and I have this important mission to do. So they may feel that, oh, now I'm the next savior of the world and I have to jump off the building and that nothing is going to harm me. There may be a sense of invincibility that comes with it. That becomes what we call mania, and that has to last for a week or less if they end up in the hospital, which oftentimes people end up because they're doing so dangerously. They may spend a lot of money they don't have. So for example, somebody may be very broke, but then suddenly go take out a loan for $500,000 because they believe they need to build the next orphanage for all of the orphans in the world.
They do it for good causes, is what you're saying. They can do it for good.
They can do it for good causes. They can do it for bad causes. Most of the time, they are not able to follow through because it's not anything well planned. They can wake up one morning and decide they're traveling, even though they have no plans of where to go or what money they're going to spend. So it could be very erratic. That's mania. Hypomania is a little bit subtle, where people can have these symptoms in lower grades. They may feel like they have more energy. They may not sleep and not feel quite as tired. They may find themselves doing a lot of things that they would not normally do. So for sometimes people at home may clean their house excessively. They may write books.
I don't mind that.
A lot of people don't mind that. But it's still part of the bipolar spectrum because often it ends up impairing their function because after a while, you can't really function like that long term, essentially. So that's hypomania. And also when people have mania or hypomania, we call them bipolar. And bipolar means they've had mania. You only need to have it once in your lifetime before you get labeled with that diagnosis. It's a one-time you get that diagnosis. And then the other one, hypomania, we call bipolar 2. Okay. There's a milder one that is called cyclothymia. That's even much lower grade where people cycle through feeling, having periods of hypomania as well, but not quite a lot of depression.
Cyclothymia. Wow. You know what? Let me make you a promise. God helping me. You are assistant professor today. When you become a professor, you're supposed to do what's the inaugural lecture, right?
Well,
They
that's in
do.
Nigeria. They don't do inaugural lecture here.
They do in
No,
North America.
not in the
I
US,
want
yeah.
to tell you that when you do your inaugural lecture, I'll be there. I'll be there in person just to celebrate with you because you clearly, all of what you just said in a few minutes, I got this through research. And even through the research, there's still a few things you said that I missed out. So I'm actually very impressed with the way you've been able to articulate this because this is a topic that is of interest to many people in North America and world over. I mean, we're having people jumping over the Third Mainland Bridge in Nigeria now. So you know that it didn't just happen overnight. People who are supposedly happy today, and then you see them in that state and you're wondering. Just yesterday or this morning, I read the fact that there's a billionaire in the US who shot himself dead. Come on. You know, so you wonder, how do people go through these extremes? You live in a life that everybody else is celebrating, and all of a sudden you give it up for what? You know, so the more information that we can shed on this topic, the better. One of the things I'll be doing sooner than later, hopefully, is I want to be doing short because this is about an hour-long session that you and I have had. I'm hoping to do maybe 5-10 minutes where you just talk about, all you do is talk. So please bear with me if I still come back to you to ask for help. Just, you know, because I want to put the information out there. I have a channel. So what I've done, I've developed a channel on YouTube called Tindosco Channel. And my goal is one thing: fight negative news, fight conspiracy theories, just provide information that will inspire people, help them to learn something. So there's none of the videos you watch there that will leave you the same. Every one of them is put there deliberately. If you're not talking to people like you, mental health, you're talking to somebody who's grown. There's a lady, for instance, who I interviewed, who I used to work with. She was a secretary. She was in front desk, welcoming people in. Today, she has a PhD, and she works in a very high, one of the private institutions in Nigeria. So that's a major leap. How do people transition like that? So I'm really happy that we have this. Up until now, one of the things I've also used that has helped me, I don't know if you are familiar. One thing I liked about the fact you said is that you talked about grief. That because grief, people usually associate grief with death, right? And there's an incident where it doesn't necessarily have to do with grief, with death. There's a lady, for instance, her name is Elizabeth. I'm trying to check her name. Elizabeth Gossell or something like that. She wrote a book on grief, and it talks about the 5 stages of grief. And it's that book that helped me to come to terms with what I went through, where the first thing is denial. From denial, you go to, are you familiar with that? 5 stages. Yeah. Denial to anger to, I think it's depression at some point.
Depression, and then bargaining.
Bargaining, excellent.
And then acceptance, yeah.
Her name is Elizabeth. I don't remember her full name, but very impressive. I read that, and so when I read those things and I understood myself, I stopped trying to convince people because I was like, I said I'm well. They said, no, you're not well. What's wrong with you? I own myself. And, you know, that's why information is very important, because information helps you to, you know, stay the course and you know, make things happen. So it's been wonderful. I'm not surprised the time is, we're hitting 1 hour mark. Was there anything
Let me just say something real quick before we kind of close. One thing I want to tell people is, one, mental health issues and problems are in the rise, partly because we as a society are more fragmented. So as we go out, I think being that person who is going to listen, who's going to be the buffer. If you kind of think about physical health problems, you think about somebody who has blood pressure, we think about, okay, yeah, you should take medicine, but you should rest, you should have differences in your lifestyle. We people around each other, we can be different. We can reach out to help people. We can be those listening ears. Instead of judging, we can listen. And we can help people go through those hard times. The more we're able to do that, the less mental health has a grip on those people, because love, kindness can help people. One of the things in therapy, we call it rapport. It's just that you feel like you have a place where you can be safe and talk. But we can be that for each other, even outside of regular therapy. So let's go out, let's be kind to people. Let's help people and not judge them, and just be there for them. Yes, help them to get to help, but more importantly, let them know that they have an ally in you, that even if the whole world is against them, that you are for them. And that's going to make a lot of difference.
I couldn't have said it better. Thank you very much, Professor Esther Akinyemi, right? That's your new last name.
Yes.
Professor Esther Akinyemi, otherwise known as Yemi Adedibu, of Professor Adedibu's daughter. Thank you very much. I'm sure your parents are proud of you. You've come a long way from that young lady I knew in primary school, and I'm very proud of what you've become, and I know that the sky is the limit. All the very best. Thank you very much for your time. On
Thank
this
you for
note,
having me.
friends, thank you very much for watching this. Please share this with as many people as you know. There's a lot that has been said today, and it's my hope that the world will be a better place because this video took place. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.